welcome. If you are joining me right now, we are at the 18th annual ICT Summit, celebrating 30 years of democracy as well. But we are so excited to be hosting you and bringing you so much conversations that came here today. I can't wait for you guys to hear speeches that came from our Premier of the Eastern Cape, Oscar Lubabalo Mabuyane, and other dignitaries as well. It is the first day of two. And if you are joining me right now, we are at the 18th annual ICT Summit. And right now I'm joined by an amazing guest who goes by the name of Juanita Clark. And she is from Digital Council. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Now, first of all, how is everything going here today?
Oh man, it is amazing. The vibe is so awesome. There's a lot of energy in the room. We even got to do a bit of a dive. So really, really awesome to be here.
That's very nice. Now, first of all, tell us about Digital Council. How did it come about? And also, what is the whole organization about as well?
Sure, it's a really, really long story, and I'm sure we haven't got that much time, but I'm going to do like a elevator pitch for you. Digital Council Africa is almost 15 years old. We're an industry association that works with government and private sector. Our main focus is the eradication of the digital divide. We look at how we can accelerate the deployment of broadband infrastructure and connect every single South African to the internet and bring everybody online to affordable, good quality internet connection.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I know that you guys, because I did my research, but I know that you guys focus a lot on youth as well, on the youth. Let's talk about the influential voices that you've partnered and collaborated with to influence, the whole organization.
Of course, our young people is our future. And it's incredibly important to make sure that we eradicate social exclusion. So bringing
Yes.
every single young person online, giving them access to the internet is really important. We're very fortunate to partner with organizations like Arambi, which just does phenomenal work through SA Youth,
Yes.
where we find a lot of skill from SA Youth. We train and develop around 50 young women in fiber optic infrastructure.
Oh, wow.
We establish fiber optic technicians. The core focus for us, though, is that there's a lot of youth employment initiatives. The important thing is that you've got to have employment opportunities at the end of it.
Yes.
Skills development
Yes.
is fantastic, but we
Yeah.
have to make sure that we put those young people then into jobs. And we do that through our partnerships with the Collective X and with Harambe and SA Youth. And we're very fortunate that they've been great supporters of our work.
Yeah. Now, speaking about the youth, do you think the youth is well equipped to actually, in terms of skills development, are they equipped enough to get into the digital space? And what can be done to just like bridge that gap?
Yeah, it's a really complex conversation. And there's not a yes or no answer to that. So it varies depending on where you are. We've got underserviced areas in the city centers. And then, of course, we've got an even bigger dilemma that faces us of our young people in rural communities and bringing them online. Affordability remains the single biggest barrier. It's one thing to now, we're seeing quite a bit of infrastructure being deployed, free Wi-Fi coming in, quite a bit happening through SA Connect, which we're very fortunate about. But now we need to still make sure that young people can access that that connectivity. And access to devices is now becoming quite a big conversation. And we've seen that in 2024, that conversation has really accelerated and it's top of mind now with our politicians. We're trying to find mechanisms to solve for good quality connections and then, of course, good quality devices.
Now, let's speak about some of the challenges that we have in the public sector as well as the private in terms of bridging that gap, in terms of skills development, resources, and also focusing on these rural areas that you speak of.
Absolutely. This is not a problem that's going to be solved by one party. This is a public-private initiative, sector initiative. If we don't lock arms on this problem, we're never going to solve for it. And I'm very fortunate that the ICT sector seems to be taking hands with government. We've had a big open door policy from our government. Our DG, that is one of the speakers this morning, DG Nonkobela Jordan Jani, is just fantastic. She's doing phenomenal work. I think she hails from the province, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yes. She's doing absolutely exceptional work. She's really committed, to helping, bringing public and private sector closer with a view to solving some of these problems. There's a lot of policy directions that's currently being published by government that all seek to solve for the bigger dilemma of connectivity, skills development, bringing young people online, equal access to education, online resources, and they've certainly been doing their part in ensuring that we narrow the digital divide.
Now let's talk about the key areas that the organization focuses on. What are those? Just to name a few.
Sure. So we infrastructure focused. So we look at the development and deployment of fiber optic infrastructure, ways to take that to lower income areas. Then we also work on tower development and the build out of tower infrastructure for mobile communications. And then data center infrastructure is a key focus for us, because as we utilize more data, we need more data centers.
Yes.
And then submarine cables, which are the cables that connect us on the ocean floor to the continent, and making sure that those are taken care of, so to speak.
Yeah. Now let's talk about collaborations as well to also help you guys, just see through those key areas as well.
So I think collaboration is a critical component, bringing the sector together,
Yes.
creating a platform for engagement, for communication between public and private sector, understanding who does what, how well we are equipped, where are the spots where we need to focus on, where are there saturation, and making sure that we create a platform for companies, public sector, private sector, to collaborate, to understand where we need to apply our efforts, so
Yes.
that so that we don't duplicate efforts. All of us are resource constrained. We haven't got resources, so it's critically important that we lock arms and that we work together to effectively utilize the resources in both government as well as private sector.
Yeah. Now let's speak about the benefits of being part of the organization rather. What are those benefits?
Sure. Well, of course, it is the platforms that we create,
Yeah.
for talking. We help them and help our private sector members. We are private sector funded. We help private sector identify policy gaps, and then we help to develop those policy gaps, of course, through our government partnerships. And we provide inputs into policy directions that are published by government. So we're sort of the glue between the private sector and government. Government will publish a policy direction. We will then take that policy direction to our members, and we'll ask them for inputs on that policy. And we will then give guidance back to government to tell them what would work for private sector, and then what doesn't. It's not always a perfect, match, but we get closer to each other.
Now, how should I ask this question? How does it make you feel as an organization, like attending such events? What does it mean for you guys to be part of these initiatives, and also just seeing success stories from especially the youth, in the digital space and in the ICT sector?
It's absolutely incredible, and it's heartwarming, because I've been part of this particular event now probably for the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
I've been coming to East London, naturally not through COVID. I think we skipped a year, but it's been incredible for me to just watch this event grow as well. And then, of course, the phenomenal work that's being done for the young people,
Yes,
and hearing the success stories of the young kids and what they do. I always go away and my hands are sore from clapping. I always think I need to just give my hands a bit of an ice bath, because it's really incredible and it's heartwarming, and it's great also to see that there's a lot happening in the Eastern Cape.
A lot.
We don't always hear these stories. But yeah, there's definitely a lot happening, a lot to be proud of.
Juanita, thank you for taking the time for this. I hope you do enjoy the rest of the summit, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me.
It's been a great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And there you've heard it from Juanita Clark, and she is from Digital Council. But we'll be back with more, so please do stay tuned. And welcome back. If you are joining me, we are still at the 18th annual ICT Summit. And right now I'm with the Premier of the Eastern Cape, Oscar Lubabalo Mabuyane. Premier, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much, sister. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, and Bonile walking around, just interacting with the exhibitors. Yeah, how's that?
Quite interesting, seeing a lot of innovation. Young people are coming up. They are really showing that transformation works. A lot of our previously disadvantaged had no access to the industry. Now they are there. We are seeing a lot of ICT engineers coming up. It's quite interesting. So there's a good job that's being done.
Talking about that, 30 years of democracy, we're celebrating that as well. Looking back where we come from and where we are now, do you think we have quite a lot of wins, and um, where do you think we go from here?
We have done a lot over 30 years. If you compare South Africa to a number of countries that would
Yes.
have probably attained their freedom many years ago, yes, it's not enough. Our people will forever be demanding
Yes.
because we must also not be comfortable with low targets and maximize minimums and minimize maximums. So it's important that we are always pushing the limit so that we almost have a universal coverage.
Yeah.
As long as we are not yet there, it will forever not be enough. So we're pushing forward towards that. But I can tell you, what you see, probably when we started, when this program started, Mr. Mfuleni, when he started it 18 years ago, many people who are here now would have been salesperson in
Yes.
companies belonging to whites
Yes.
and all that people. But now those are engineers. If you go to the conference room, it's packed.
Yeah.
It reflects demographics of our country. All racial groups are participating. It's exciting.
Yes.
It's a conference driven by business. This is what we want to see. Government must only create conducive environment for business to flourish, for business to grow. So here in the ICT space, this is where you then realize the significance of R&D.
Yeah.
Because here you innovate. A lot of things that are done, that are being prototyped, are being innovated.
Yes.
So it's important that we work in collaboration. I see local government is a little bit missing in action. So with the challenges that we have in the local government, I think we can easily find some tailor-made solutions.
Yes.
From the ICT space, using ICT, leveraging on what ICT can do. So I mean, I'm quite excited.
Yes.
The conference is superb, it's good, well attended nationally, captains of industry. It has been growing leaps and bounds, and we're just supporting that. It's one of those signature provincial events that we know come November, there will be this event in the Eastern Cape, and it will not fail. It has never failed.
Now, speaking about celebration and being excited, let's talk about your idea for the smart city in the Bishu precinct. Let's talk about that.
Yes, definitely. We're basically putting that. We're looking more for the cognitive city. This is where we think that we can experiment.
Yeah.
The smart city concept. Yes, we know we've been pushing Port St. John's, but we kind of diluted that by bringing a broader version of that concept into Eastern Seaboard, which has now kind of made us to lose focus on just focusing on Port St. John's or focusing on what do you call it, the other part, or from the Vigisville down to Mkanduli. I forgot the name now. So those areas that are along the coast. But now we think that the Bishop Precinct that we are about to commence constructing will actually give us a platform to showcase and demonstrate the significance and the importance of smart city. And it will be able to be taken there as an epicenter and roll it out.
Yeah. Now, Prima, last year you spoke about the Wi-Fi project, just to also installing Wi-Fi in schools in the rural areas, like your areas as well as in Zimbabwe. Like, how happy were you with the progress, and also where do we stand right now?
We're doing a great job. Firstly, you need an infrastructure under the ground before you can talk Wi-Fi connection, network, and all that, whether it's mobile. So you needed to put up an infrastructure. That's why we had to start with the rolling out broadband.
Yeah.
So that program has been moving quite swiftly. Yes, it delayed to an extent that the project budget was affected. That's why now we're a bit battling with project funds, because the time frame which was set up had to pass. Remember, the matter was in court. When we came in 2019, we had to unlock it from court, get an out-of-court settlement, move with the service provider appointed. So a lot of work has been done. We are almost close now to 2,000 sites that have been connected, but we are target by March next year of about 2.7 sites to be connected. Remember, we are rolling out that infrastructure.
Yes.
Health, education, must talk e-health, must talk e-education, e-sport, and everybody. You connect into those into the broadband line, into the sites. You want libraries that must be digitally
Yeah.
driven. So all those kind of issues. But we are creating that conducive environment to enable that possibility, and that's exactly what we are doing.
Yes. Now, Premier, I can imagine that we have problems all the time and we have so many challenges. But what do you think is on top of your list right now? What would you like to tackle right now? Which industry would you like to focus on?
Well, when we started the seventh term, we indicated our five growth frontiers. That includes the digital economy and how we are driving agriculture, agro-processing, oceans economy, auto sector expansion. As you see in Nelson Mandela, that last week FAW was announcing additional 200 million investment. Stellantis has started to break the ground in Nelson Mandela. So a lot of work is happening. So we're looking at that, but also more on infrastructure, the roads. As you move around, you have seen a lot of road construction. We're trying to turn our province into a construction site.
Yeah.
But what we know now, as Chinese say, if you want to be rich, build roads. So if we want to improve the economy, we want to drive our GDP into double digits, we must actually focus on the infrastructure, the economic infrastructure, the road, etc. So the climate change and global warming is the biggest threat. That's what we need ICT also to come in with some tailor-made or cutting-edge solutions around it. We're dealing with other problems, the teething problems of crime, corruption, as you would know, the extortion mafias, construction mafias. Those ones are things that we can easily dispense with, and we're dealing with that effectively now that we've got an integrated approach with the police and all that, the law enforcement. So, but I'm saying the climate change, it's something that you don't know. You sleep not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. Yes, the weather forecast can tell us, weather service can indicate to us and warn us, but we still needed a sustainable way of mitigating the disastrous effect of climate change and global warming.
Yeah. Premier, thank you so much. We see the work that you're doing. You're doing a great job. So thank you so much. And thank you for attending the ICT Summit every single year. Siyabulela kakhulu.
Ngozi, welcome.
And thank you so much for joining me once again. And right now I am with Mr. Musa from Neka Technology Group. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me today.
Now, I understand that your presentation inside had to do with cybersecurity threat, right? So let's talk a bit more about that. What does that mean for us in terms of security as well when it comes to AI and just the whole thing about technology? You know how people are, especially people who don't know nothing about technology, who can't even operate their phones. And there's so much going on with scams and, also just like AI is just such a confusing and foreign concept for most people. So what does that mean for us?
I think let's firstly look at the age that we're living in. Everything around us is digitally connected.
That's true.
And if we just look at some basics, almost every citizen that we interact with has a smartphone.
Yes.
Whether we're sending a WhatsApp message, whether somebody's going on Instagram or Facebook,
Yeah.
they interacting with some sort of connected digital service. So that brings about the issue where information is being shared in some form or the other. Whether you're uploading your details onto Facebook because they need an email address, a date
Yeah.
of birth, you're uploading pictures, etc., etc. That creates information. So that's one form of information. And then with that information, somebody's got to harness that to be able to do something with it.
Yes.
So if we just put that in a practical term, if you're using Facebook as an example, Facebook is using AI in the background based on the information they're collecting from you.
Yes. Yes.
So there's a few things that they're doing with this information.
Yeah.
Firstly, they might look at your age in terms of what you've uploaded, and they know based on your age group, the AI will target specific posts or advertisements based on your age group. Because if we both sign up on Facebook today or Meta, what you see on the advertisements and suggestions are not the same thing that I see.
Yes.
So that is where AI starts harnessing all of this information. But there's also ethical components to AI. Because if you use the information in the wrong way, you could start manipulating individuals and you start creating a certain bias, because it can drive you down a rabbit hole where you start thinking in a certain direction. And that brings about information security. So when we talk about ethics and the use of information and how we handle information, that's where regulations come into play. So if you look at global regulations, especially in the EU was a leader in the space. They introduced something called GDPR, and that is how you're supposed to store, process, and distribute somebody's personal information. South Africa followed shortly after that, and they introduced something called the Protection of Personal Information Act, which we now know as POPI. So for the layman on the street, that's firstly an important piece to understand. So when signing up services online, there's actually a little small fine print and a button at the bottom that says, do you consent these providers to distribute your information? If you click yes on that, that is where you start getting all these phone calls from people trying to sell you something. But on the other hand, cyber criminals also subscribe to the same feed, so they also pay for that information. So ultimately, they then use that information to create what we call social engineering attacks against individuals. And this is where we move away from traditional 419 scams. If you remember a long time ago, you used to get these funny emails and SMSs that says, I'm a wealthy prince from Arabia,
Yes.
and my money is locked in a foreign account, but I want to leave that money and share it with you. Can you please reach out to me? And we had some gullible people, but you could see from the surface that this isn't real, and it's not something that you would typically get caught in unless you're in a very desperate situation, or you're from a much older generation. Because I remember my mother telling me she wants to retire, this prince is going to give her all the money, and I said that's a scam. But where things have now moved to is based on the information that you're sharing on social media, on different platforms, the AI that cyber criminals are using now creates a profile around you. So if you're a person that goes and poozas every Thursday, and you're sitting at a tavern somewhere and you're posting pictures on Instagram, the AI starts building that profile that says, oh, okay, this person likes to drink a certain brand of cider because we can see they're posting it. Now they start creating adverts of competitions. You fill that in. Next thing, you enter the competition, but it's a fake competition. And then they say, no, you've won a prize, but you need to pay for the shipping of the prize because you stay in Kwabecha or you stay somewhere, but the prize is being shipped from Johannesburg. So what do you do in your gullible state? Oh, I've won a prize, it looks legitimate. You end up paying the money and the prize never gets delivered. You know, that's how complicated it's getting. But also what I'd like to caution a lot of citizens in this period that we're in, especially with Black Friday and the festive season, a lot of people get bonuses, they're shopping for Christmas, they're looking for specials. And hopefully you haven't come across this. There's a lot of fake websites advertising retail goods.
Yeah. Now, before I do let you go, let's speak about the whole AI, artificial intelligence thing in the workspace.
Yes.
People are very concerned about that. What does that mean for the future? Are people going to lose jobs? Are people's jobs, on the line? Like, how does that work? What is your take on that?
So I always look back to the different industrial revolutions that we've seen in the world. And with each industrial revolution, some form of technology influenced that industrial revolution. And it changed the way that we see the world. It changed the way that our education system works. It changes the way that our health system works. And it changes the way in terms of how we do job creation and the industries that come abroad. Now, I use a few examples. If you look at the PC, and probably if you look back at your grandparents or even your parents, computers in their world wasn't really a big influence in terms of being able to execute their job function. It was a lot of manual work. I speak on a phone, I write stuff in a file, I do my accounting on a calculator or a basic, very basic system. But when PCs were introduced, businesses started becoming more and more reliant, but we didn't know that. So it became a general technology without anybody knowing what the future of the technology brings. So very similar if we look at internet and broadband connectivity, it was also a general technology, and the very same thing with artificial intelligence.
Yes.
There was not a lot of change in terms of the ICT industry and technology until this artificial intelligence wave that we're seeing now. And a lot of analysts are saying that every 150 years, there's a technology that disrupts the world. And the AI technology is exactly that in terms of the disruption that we're seeing. And from a work perspective or a workplace point of view, people actually need to be worried about AI. And I'll give you some stats.
Yeah.
More than 70% of call center agents will not have jobs in the next 24 months. They'll be replaced by artificial intelligence. And how much of our youth work in call centers at this point? Okay? Because the AI has become so real that it can speak to you in a human-like voice, and it's able to use data that it's collected about you to have an intelligent conversation, and you won't even know that you're speaking to a human. Okay? So what does that mean? Yes, on the one side, there's a scare factor where jobs will be replaced because AI brings about a lot of automation, and it's able to do things quicker, faster, and more effective. So people need to start thinking about reskilling themselves.
A lot of people have different views about it, which is also something that's very interesting. But thank you so much for also giving us the stats as well, because I've never heard that. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time for this interview.
No, thank you for having me.
It was very informative. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, that is all that we have for you for the first day of the 18th Annual ICT Summit with myself, Sinazo January. But right now, let's call it a day. And let's meet next week as we look into more conversations right here from the ICT Summit.